making sure that collective bargaining rights for unions are protected, valuing the voice and influence of civil society, and recognizing that we are citizens first, not just consumers. So the idea that the state, which is our government of elected representatives, are supposed to be accountable to us, to the public as a whole, not just those who elected them, and certainly not just to the people who are buying their way into having influence in the political sphere. Under the neoliberal capitalist system, which this country has gradually been subjected to since 1980, since the Reagan era, as opposed to, we have, of course, imposed the neoliberal economic system around the world in response to crisis, which Naomi Klein writes about very eloquently in the Shock Doctrine. But in this country, we also have neoliberalism, in which the role of the state is not perceived to be for the provision of social services to the public, but to support the private sector, as if corporations were people or maybe even citizens. The kinds of changes that have taken place under this economic system, neoliberal system since 1980, is to reduce regulations on the environment, workplace safety, etc., to increase subsidies to corporations, but not to people, to lower taxes, to increase private contracts for government work and military engagement, to decrease social services, even including education, healthcare, and unemployment insurance, benefits for poor mothers, etc., poor single mothers, and to eviscerate labor union rights. So all of this has led to record impoverishment and profits to business owners and managers, especially in the top economic strata, and record levels of inequality and record corruption of politics. And so one of the proposals of the Occupy Wall Street movement and those who are in solidarity with it is to repeal the Citizens United decision, Supreme Court decision, and implement a constitutional amendment to say that corporations are not people. So, and finally for now, because this is a huge topic, what are legitimate methods of democratic popular participation and organization? So these are the things that I have up on these slides. Practices are easier to capture on film than values. So these images that have been sort of on rotation are just some of the infinite ways that individuals and civil society groups have organized to contribute their voice in the public sphere as a way to influence public policy, reform a sick system, or overhaul a broken one. There have been examples from around the world here included. I want you to take just a few seconds, another minute, to talk to your neighbor and share what methods you yourself have used as a way to participate in our democracy. It could be any number of things, writing letters, voting even, or participating in an Occupy movement. You might share those kinds of things. So go ahead and take a minute and do that. From your neighbor. Anything you hadn't thought about?
Australia's better than the US.
The lifestyle. Oh, lifestyle. right? Yeah. Anything else? What? Shop local. Relocalization.
Listen to what your neighbor has to say.
Yeah. So I've got some of these images. Here's this one again. Of ways that people around the world are organizing and examples that have been set throughout history. So the key now with the Occupy Wall Street movement is this. We need to reclaim and assert our own democratic principles and cultural values in our methods and proposals. We need to recognize that inequality of wealth means inequality of power, which is not democratic. We need to recognize that we are global citizens now. Therefore, we must collaborate with civil society from around the world and develop a common agenda to rewrite the ground rules upon which the whole system is built. Which means, of course, that we're talking about fundamental structural change, which is, yes, the R word, revolution. Is one of those empty signifiers that people can overlay many levels of fear and intimidation on. But the way that I think of the word revolution comes from my work in the Andes. And the word Pachacuti is a word that means revolution in Aymara, the Aymara language. And that means a rebalancing of the world through a rapid and tumultuous turn of events that could be renovation or a catastrophe if it's not handled properly. So right now, in the world in general, we are headed toward catastrophe. There is irreversible global warming and climate change, violent suppression of peaceful protest in Zuccotti Park, Tahrir Square, college campuses, Oakland, Syria, etc., and more wealth accruing to the top of society as it's being sucked from the rest. But the way for global civil society and the Occupy Wall Street movement to act in the public sphere in the face of these kinds of catastrophes, or in order to open a space for the renovation, is the same. A truly nonviolent, democratic, postmodern, global citizens' resistance. So there's finally the chance to make this a reality, drawing on examples and inspiration from Tunisia, Egypt, Bolivia, Seattle, the Indignados of Spain, Wisconsin, the Zapatistas, Martin Luther King, students in Durban, South Africa, the Occupy movement in cities and towns around the US, Tim DeChristopher, and many other individuals and collective actions. In fact, the people around the world have been waiting for a very long time for the people in the United States to wake up and take action. And it's important to remember that political openings like this are very rare. They don't just come around every so many years. So these kinds of opportunities must be seized. And the sort of foundational principle of democracy, as I see it, is this opening of a space for dialogue. And the Occupy Wall Street has irrevocably changed the public dialogue, the public discourse in this country, and that is something to continue to build on. And using the examples and fantastic suggestions and framing that Elizabeth Dunn provided for us is the only way to move forward. And you know, this is what democracy looks like. So thank you.
Again, because we're a little bit behind, we only have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions.
Do you think democracy could survive on either a state or even smaller level, global, then the majority can actually be heard?
Yeah, I often think myself that a nation, especially a nation as large as the United States, is just too big to have one federal system. So, you know, there are certainly examples from around the world that would show that democracy certainly can function on smaller scales, and certainly does. I mean, obviously, it's multi-scalar anyway. As an anthropologist, of course, we have this long historical perspective, all the way back to the very beginning of human